Thank you. Thank you. Thank you and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa and welcome to Threshold of Hope, our program where we bring you the writings of Blessed John Paul the Great. Before we get to emails, I just want to mention that today is the feast of St. Stephen I of Hungary. He was born in the year 1001 and died in 1038. He was somebody who became Christian along with his family, and then saw to the spread of the Christian faith throughout Hungary. Now, this is somebody who was a descendant of Attila the Hun, and to see this Christianization going on was a powerful experience. And so he started some of the dioceses, built a lot of the churches, and called his people to the Christian faith. And when he died, he passed on the son. His own son also was canonized with him because his son died before he did, but during a hunting accident. And together they had a lot of miracles associated with their bodies. People mourned them for 3 years straight because they were so much beloved by their people. So we celebrate that and pray for all the people of Hungary on this great feast of their founding Christian king. Now we can take a look at emails. Remember, you can send emails by writing to threshold@ewtn.com. First one says, Dear Father Mitch, I've got a tough situation. I've got some of my dad's ashes from when he was cremated years ago. My sister also had some, but the container broke, so they were lost. Now our mother is on her deathbed and will be cremated. My sister wants some of my share of dad's ashes to keep with mom's in a new container. However, I just want to bury dad's ashes after having found out the Catholic Church doesn't believe in separating and mixing a deceased person's ashes. My family is Protestant, so they don't have a problem with this. A priest told me in the interest of interdenominational and familial peace to share them. Should I share dad's ashes or deny my sister's request and bury them? How far does one compromise for peace? Wendy in Valrico, Florida. Well, Wendy, you've got the basic principle correct, that you should bury your dad's ashes. That's the proper way to treat the remains of the deceased. And you do that out of respect. And let your sister know that you're not being selfish, you're being respectful to your dad's ashes. Now, one of the things that you can do, because they're Protestants, you can ask them, do you believe in the resurrection of the dead that Jesus taught about? Because Jesus promised the resurrection of the dead. If you believe in the resurrection of the dead, then why would you separate part of the body from other parts of the body? What do you want, Jesus to go on a big search, finding the different parts of dad's body or mom's body? Put them together and let them be there for the resurrection. And ask your sister, in terms of the faith, so that it's not a question of you being mean-spirited or selfish or any of these other things, but rather you are being respectful to the body of the dead. And it's one of the corporal works of the church to bury the dead. So you should do that. And try to see that your mother is buried respectfully as well. Second email. Dear Father Mitch, I've been interested in reading the Quran, not because I want to convert, but because I want to know for myself what Muslims really believe. I also wanted to know if you yourself have read the Quran and which translation I should read. Do you know of any books written by good Catholic authors on the Quran and Islam in general from an Orthodox Catholic perspective? This is from Joshua. Joshua, let me give you the answer to your last question. There's a book that EWTN's religious catalog has. It's called Inside Islam. It's by Daniel Ali and Robert Spencer. Daniel Ali was a convert from Islam to Catholicism. And I did the foreword for the book. I highly recommend it. It's in question and answer form and will give you a lot of very good information about what Muslims believe. I would read that before you read the Quran. The reason being, the Quran is not organized in terms of an historical development, nor is it organized by theme or by idea. It's a very confusing book to read. Yeah, and to answer one of your questions, yes, I have read the Quran, and I've read parts of it in Arabic. Now, the best translation is by Daoud, and you can get this from Penguin Publishers. Penguin Press publishes that one. That would be your best bet. That's the one that Daniel Ali, I don't know Arabic so well as to be able to compare the translations myself, but Daniel Ali recommends the Daoud translation, and I recommend that you read that too. That'll give you a better sense. I think it's Ibn Daoud, but I know it's by Penguin Press. So that would be it. And you can read the Quran, but it's very, very complicated because things are so out of order. But do read it. There's nothing wrong with reading it. But I found it very confusing to read unless I already had known. I already had done some work ahead of time on trying to understand Islam, and then that helped me to do it. But certainly one reading of the Quran won't give you a good understanding of it. It takes a lot of work to understand it and read it and get all the different parts of it. I'm still learning a lot about it as I do my studies. All right. We are in the document known as Redemptoris Missio, which means Mission of the Redeemer. And you can download a free copy of Redemptoris Missio at our website, EWTN.com. When you go to the website, go to the television tab and click EWTN live shows. Then click on Threshold of Hope, and you can watch last week's show if you missed it. And you can also download this document that we're going through right there on that page. Or if you prefer, you can go to EWTN's document library. In the document library, look under Encyclicals for Redemptoris Missio. We are on paragraph 57. And remember, we've been talking about interreligious dialogue. That's what we were talking about last week, and paragraph 57 continues that discussion, saying that a vast field lies open to dialogue, which can assume many forms and expressions. Now, you can have exchanges between experts in religious traditions or official representatives of those traditions to cooperation for integral development and safeguarding of religious values. So some of the dialogue should be between experts, people who really understand each other's religion. That's a very important thing. And there should be also dialogue with the official representatives, the Catholic bishops and the leaders of the other religions. That shows respect, that we want to engage in a dialogue on an equal playing field. So that's a good thing. But also, part of the dialogue means safeguarding religious values and cooperation for integral development. A lot of times, not only Christianity, but the religion of the people of the area are under attack from secular forces. And we can cooperate with the other religions against secular criticisms of religion, and help to strengthen each other against secularism and materialism. That would be a very good thing to do. There's also a sharing of their respective spiritual experiences. So that one of the things that's very important in the dialogue is that you talk about what you actually experience. What is the experience of the Christian? See, sometimes you can get so caught up in the ideas about religion that you don't talk about the concrete experiences that people have. And if you don't listen to what each other has happened to them in the religious experience, you'll be talking like ships passing in the night. Whereas you can talk about experiences and say, this is why we worship. And this is what we derive from our worship. And that would be a very good part of the dialogue. And there's also the so-called dialogue of life, through which believers of different religions bear witness before each other in daily life to their own human and spiritual values. Because a lot of times we have values in common. Most religions, I mean, I say most because I don't know every single religion, but just to be, precise, most religions, if not all of them, forbid murder and stealing. No religion likes lying and criticizes and condemns those who bear false witness and tell lies. So these are good values to share in common, and we can help one another live according to those values in order to build a more just and fraternal society. So that's one of the things that, for instance, Muslims, speaking of the Quran, Muslim leaders and Catholic leaders at the United Nations have cooperated with each other on issues of family life and on the issues of life itself, abortion and such, so that we share a lot of values in common with them. And we can share those values and help one another in the world that wants to change the meaning of family. Each member of the faithful, so all the laity as well as the clergy, and all Christian communities are called to practice dialogue. This is not something only for the experts and the leaders. Everybody can share in dialogue between other religions. Not always to the same degree, and not always in the same way, because a lot of us don't know enough about the other religions to be able to talk about it. Or we know a little bit, but not a whole lot. So we're not going to talk the same way as an expert might. But we can share at our own level what we know on dialogue with other religions. The contribution of the laity is indispensable in this area. For they can, as it says in Christi Fidelis Laici, in paragraph 35, where it says that the Synod Fathers have mentioned that the lay faithful can favor the relations which ought to be established with the followers of various religions through their example in the situations in which they live and in their activities. So that by giving a good example, you show other religious people from other religious traditions, what is possible for the Catholic and how Catholicism improves our lives. And that would be a very good thing to do. Some of them will also be able to make a contribution through research and study. And in Gentes, the Vatican II document on missions, it says, worthy of special praise are those laymen who in universities or scientific institutes promote by their historical and scientific religious research the knowledge of peoples and of religions, thus helping the heralds of the gospel and preparing for the dialogue with non-Christians. So there are a lot of lay people who are experts, and they can bring their expertise to help in interreligious dialogue. The Pope says that he is well aware that many missionaries and Christian communities find in the difficult and often misunderstood path of dialogue their only way of bearing sincere witness to Christ and offering generous service to others. Now, where would that kind of situation be, where the only thing you can do is dialogue? I knew of a situation of missionaries from my province of Jesuits who were in Nepal, and it was against the law to change your religion. So the law made it clear that you cannot change your religion. But the government allowed us to open a school. And in that school, we could not try to convert people to Christianity, though many did. Many did, including some of the princes. The sons of the king became Catholics. But they had to go to India to convert. They couldn't change their religion in Nepal. But what the Jesuits did do is a lot of dialogue and talk to them about the kind of religion that they lived in Nepal. And that's where they had that dialogue. That was as much as they could do for years and years. Now, that has borne fruit, and they're beginning to have, I don't think they have a bishop yet, but they're talking about starting a diocese because the faith has been growing strongly in Nepal because of that early work that was done in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I wish to encourage them to persevere with faith and love, even in places where their efforts are not well received. Dialogue is a path toward the kingdom and will certainly bear fruit, even if the times and seasons are known only to the Father. And here he quotes Acts of the Apostles, chapter 1, verse 6 and 7. So when they had come together, they asked him, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father has fixed by his own authority. Neither, I'm about to sneeze, neither do we know when our dialogue will bear good fruit. Excuse me. We don't know when our dialogue will bear good fruit. That's up to the Father. But it's a start, and it's an important aspect of our mission. Paragraph 58 is entitled, Promoting Development by Forming Consciences. So, the mission to the nations is still being carried out today, for the most part in the southern regions of the world, where action on the behalf of integral development and liberation from all forms of oppression is most urgently needed. So in the southern hemisphere, there are a lot of poor countries. And many of those countries have dictatorships. Some of them are conquered by other people. We see of a variety of problems in various parts of Africa and Asia and Latin America. And sometimes there are rebel governments that are very oppressive. Sometimes rebel armies force other people to join the army, and they cut off the arms and legs of people, and just horrible situations, horrible situations. So in the southern part of the world, action for development and liberation from oppression is urgently needed. The church has always been able to generate among the people she evangelizes a drive toward progress. That's one of the things the church is very concerned about, that there would be progress in these different areas, and that these aspects of progress would help the people to move forward in their culture. Today, more than in the past, missionaries are being recognized as the promoters of development. In the past, they oftentimes were not seen as bringing development. But missionaries today bring with them a lot of skills. They bring computer skills. They bring skills of medicine. They bring educational skills. And they help to spread development through these different techniques, and many, many others. And governments and international experts recognize the role of the missionaries for bringing development. A lot of times, missionaries were looked at as the people who helped bring the empires. They prepared the way for the conquerors or came in the heels of conquerors. That's not the case today. That's not the situation. And the government and international experts are impressed at the remarkable results which they gain with scanty means. Even though they don't have much, they get more accomplished than a lot of the governments do. Why is that? Because they're honest. In a lot of these places, the governments are corrupt. And because they are corrupt, they steal the material that's meant for the poor. The church can be trusted. And the church gets the means of progress to the people most in need. And this is one of the reasons why the church is so trustworthy. In Pope John Paul's encyclical, Solicitudo Rei Socialis, which means concern for the social reality, he stated in paragraph 41 that the church does not have technical revolutions to offer for the problem of underdevelopment as such. That belongs to corporations and governments. But the church is an expert in humanity. The church understands other human beings. And she offers her first contribution to the solution of the urgent problem of development when she proclaims the truth about Jesus Christ, about herself, and about man, applying this truth to a concrete situation. So the church does its best job by proclaiming Jesus, letting people know about him and what he's doing, and showing the dignity of human beings that he helps to bring. And other people will have more tools for development. The church is not going to go into these countries and start factories. That's going to be the job of international governments and international corporations, because the church is not a job-providing organization. But the church can talk about the dignity of the people who are available for hire. That she can do. The Conference of Latin American Bishops at the Mexican city of Puebla wrote this in the Third Conference of Latin American Bishops, 1979. And I quote, "The best service we can offer to our brother is evangelization, which helps him live as a son of God, sets him free from injustices, and assists his overall development." This is going to be a key element. By evangelizing, we help them to see their dignity. It is not the church's mission to work directly on the economic, technical, or political levels, or to contribute materially to development. Again, we're not there to start factories and provide those kind of jobs. Other people need to do that. Rather, the church's mission consists essentially in offering people an opportunity not to have more stuff. It's not about the church saying, get more property and more possessions. Rather, the church calls us to be more, be a better person, be somebody who knows how to use the material goods. And you do this by awakening their consciences through the gospel. Let the gospel of Jesus Christ awaken their conscience. As John Paul wrote or said to the priests and religious in Jakarta, Indonesia back in 1989, and I quote, "Great attention has been given to human development, and this is certainly a worthy goal. But authentic human development must be rooted in an even deeper evangelization." Because if you don't have the evangelization and you get people goods, what happens? They become avaricious. They become selfish. They become possessive. You have to have virtue. How many of you would give your 10-year-old child $1 million? Hopefully, none of you. Because a 10-year-old child has no comprehension of what to do with $1 million. They would spend it on dumb stuff because they don't know a whole lot. So you want to give it to somebody who's wise. You want to train the child to be a good man or woman and know what to do best with a great inheritance before they use it. And that's part of the task. The church and her missionaries also promote development through schools, hospitals, printing presses, universities, and experimental farms. You can't underestimate the role of experimental farms because many poor countries are still very agricultural. They have a lot of farms, but they don't have the access to modern tools and modern methods of farming. And so the church had, I saw this when I was in Peru back in 1975. The church runs a number of farm schools. They can't go to an A&G, an agricultural university or something. So the church makes that available to them. But a people's development does not derive primarily from money, material assistance, or technological means. That's not where it primarily comes from. Primarily, it comes from the formation of consciences and the gradual maturing of ways of thinking and patterns of behavior. Man is the principal agent of development, not money or technology. Money and technology are good tools. You use those tools, but they are not what really makes the change. Human beings make the change. That's where it's mothers, fathers, teachers, nuns, priests, brothers, monks. They make the difference. The church forms consciences by revealing to peoples the God whom they seek and do not yet know. The church reveals the grandeur of man, created in God's image and loved by him, and the equality of all men and women as God's sons and daughters. The church tries to teach the mastery of man over nature, created by God, and placed at man's service, and the obligation to work for the development of the whole person and for all of humankind. This is the way the church wants to form conscience. This is the task that we have. And the technology, education, and money are mere tools to help us with these goals of forming people to be the right kind of people. That's our task. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back in just a couple of minutes with some questions from our studio audience and then continue on with this document, so please stay with us. We have a nice audience here tonight, and we'd love to have you come and join us. If you get a chance to be part of our audience, please call our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966, or go to our website, www.ewtn.com, and they'll help you with information about where you can stay, scheduling for the programs, and getting over to Hansville to join the Sisters for Mass, being here for Masses, and all sorts of other things. And if you need direction to some of our local restaurants, you can always ask help for that. Or like I did today, went out and got a haircut. We have an old-timey barbershop. I love the old-time barbershop, Art's Barbershop, because it's a place where men get together and gossip. Find out all the stuff going on. All right, let's go here to a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Chicago.
Chicago. And what is your question?
Father, my question is, when the remains of a loved one, the wife has the remains of a loved one and has not buried them, where does the responsibility lie? Does it still lie with the wife, or does it rely back onto the siblings? Well,
see, this is where there are two kinds of legal concerns that you have to deal with. One of them is, is the executor different than the wife? And does the wife have legal authority over it? And the executor can give her that authority, and the state probably would give her that authority. And so under the law, the rest of the family does not have much ability to tell her what to do or make her do something. They can tell her what to do, but they can't make her. And so that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind, that you can say, look, we believe in the resurrection of the dead. Do you expect that to happen on the mantle? You know, is that where the resurrection is going to be? I mean, you know, a lot of people have an emotional attachment, but you can always go to the cemetery and visit, and it should be in consecrated ground. You know, to bury somebody in the backyard is not a good idea, because backyards get sold. And then your loved one is there, and then you have no rights to go and visit the grave. You know, so, you know, to try to talk to her and say, look, out of respect for the dead. And if they're Catholic, let them know this is one of the precepts of the church and one of the works of mercy, to bury the dead. We should do that. So we'll have a ceremony, you know, of a blessing of the grave and all that. You can do that. Or put them in the columbarium or something. But you should try to encourage them to do that. Yes, sir. Where are you from, first of all?
Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Great, good to have you here. And I've been there before. It's a nice little town. What's your question?
My question is, how long can we expect to continue to engage in dialogue that's showing no progress?
If the dialogue is showing no progress, then the dialogue will fade away on its own. You know, you know, that just happens. And, you know, like any conversation, if one person is not interested in the dialogue and is not interested in sharing, then the dialogue is going to fall apart. And that's one of the things that happens. But as long as it's possible for the dialogue to exist, it's good to have the dialogue, you know, to have that conversation and to have it as friendly as possible. And if the dialogue is failing, maybe have a nice meal together. You know, there's nothing like food to help bring people together. I see the Italian lady in front is saying yes. I love it. I love it, especially when they know how to make good food. But there are things to celebrate together too, so that you celebrate anniversaries of the dialogue and things like that, so that there is also a warmth and friendliness rather than an increasing coldness and distance. So keeping that going on for years is not a bad thing, because you never know when something might click. Okay? All right. Unless, of course, you're dealing only with politicians, which I wasn't talking about. Then at some point it has to come to an end. All right. We are on paragraph 59, which is still continuing the theme of promoting development by forming consciences, and that's one way we do development. He continues, through the gospel message, the church offers a force for liberation, which promotes development precisely because it leads to conversion of heart and of ways of thinking. So that this is how the church wants to be a force for liberation, by changing hearts. Because, you know, you give you an example. The French people experienced a liberation from the King of France. And they stormed the Bastille and let out the prisoners and all that. But what happened? Because there was no conversion of the individuals, there was a bloodbath known as the Reign of Terror, in which tens of thousands of people died during the French Revolution. That liberation did not lead to a positive improvement of the country. It led to mass death. So we need to have a development that leads to conversion of heart and ways of thinking, and that it fosters the recognition of each person's dignity. That's one of the things that the French Revolution was taking away, was human dignity. People either agreed with the revolution, or if they had any doubts, or as a matter of fact, if they complained about the price of bread after the revolution, they were executed. They had their heads cut off. That's not about the dignity of persons. And we need to have that sense. Also, to encourage solidarity. The Pope is always very big on this idea of solidarity, and he learned it while Poland was under the Nazis, and that he had a sense that we have to be in solidarity even with the Nazis, even though we are victims of their crimes. They are still human beings, and that the transformation of Poland means a learning to feel solidarity for the Nazis. Not agreement with them. You don't agree with them, but you have a solidarity with them too as human beings. There also needs to be a commitment and service of one's neighbor as part of this, so that you're not just trying to eliminate everybody who disagrees with you like the French Revolution did, but you really see a sense of commitment and service of the neighbor. And you give everyone a place in God's plan. Everybody has a role. You don't eliminate people like the Russians did. The Russians eliminated people who disagreed with them in the communist times because they didn't believe in God's plan. They didn't believe in God. And so they could see that certain people did not fit with the plans of the state. And if you didn't fit with the plans of the state, you could be eliminated. Whereas we bring a perspective that you have a role in God's plan. And that's part of our task. And God's plan is the building of his kingdom of peace and justice. And everybody has a role in helping to bring the peace and justice of God's kingdom, beginning already in this life. It's not only waiting until we die and go to heaven and get out of this valley of tears, but even during this life, we try to bring peace and justice. This is the biblical perspective of the new heavens and the new earth. For instance, in Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17, the Lord said, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind." 2 Peter 3:13 brings up the same hope of a new heavens and a new earth, and so does Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. They speak again and again of this new heavens and new earth. And that hope for the paradise of heaven is a stimulus for human beings. It motivates us to try to bring justice here on earth, because we see that's the goal. The goal that we have before us is a place of peace and God's justice. So to get to that goal, we want to live it already. And it's also a goal for man's advancement in history. We want to see as the purpose for where we're headed, the renewing of the earth. And so we have that as a goal, and we help to shape the way we look at the world through the eyes of that goal. Man's development derives from God, and from the model of Jesus, who is God and man. And it must lead us back to God. As we see in the encyclical Populorum Progressio, paragraph 15 by Pope Paul VI. In God's plan, every man is born to seek self-fulfillment. For every human life is called to some task by God. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a task. No exceptions to that. At birth, a human being possesses certain aptitudes and abilities in germinal form. So at birth, you've got a seed of what you're supposed to be. And these qualities are to be cultivated so that they may bear fruit, like a seed grows up and bears fruit. By developing these traits through formal education and personal effort, the individual works his way toward the goal set for him by the Creator. This is what all of us do. We're all on the way to fulfilling the purpose God has, being mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, scholars, professionals, workers, all kinds of things. Every different aspect of life is included in God's plan. Populorum Progressio continues in paragraph 16, where it says, self-development, however, is not left up to man's option. So it's not just up to us to figure out. Just as the whole of creation is ordered towards its Creator. The creation, the world, has its purpose in God who made it. So too, the rational creature, human beings, should of their own accord direct their life to God, the first truth and highest good. So that one of the things that we do is direct ourselves toward God. Why did God make me? It was the question that we begin the Baltimore Catechism with. And there's the general answer, to know, love, and serve Him in this life and to be happy with Him for all eternity. But there's also the specific, why did God create me? What purpose do I have? And what does He want me to do? This is why there is a close connection between the proclamation of the gospel and human promotion. Because with the gospel of Jesus, we find out that God has a plan and purpose for each of us. He calls us. He has a summons for us. And He wants us to follow that summons. And that will help with promoting human existence to its goals. The contribution of the church and of evangelization to the development of peoples concerns not only the struggle against material poverty and underdevelopment in the south of the world. So we do have to have a concern for the development of the needs of poor people in the southern hemisphere, in Africa, Asia, Latin America. But the contribution of the church also concerns the northern hemisphere, which is wealthier, the Americas and Europe, which is prone to a moral and spiritual poverty caused by overdevelopment. So this is something that he cites from his encyclical Solicitudo Rei Socialis, paragraph 28. A disconcerting conclusion about the most recent period of history should serve to enlighten us. Side by side with the miseries of underdevelopment, themselves unacceptable, we find ourselves up against a form of superdevelopment, equally inadmissible, because like the former, it is contrary to what is good and to true happiness. So some people have so much and they're still not happy. Some people have so many possessions, so much stuff, and it doesn't make them happy. I remember reading a book about the Disney Corporation and how so many of these people were making $150 million a year if they only ate caviar 3 meals a day. the best beluga caviar. They still could not spend that amount of money on themselves. And yet they were looking for raises. It doesn't make you happy. And what is the purpose of having this stuff? This is the question. A certain way of thinking that is uninfluenced by religious outlook and is widespread in some parts of today's world is based on the idea that increasing wealth and the promotion of economic and technological growth is enough for people to develop on the human level. So if you just give people enough wealth, they'll be happy. But look at the people who have so much wealth. A lot of them are not happy. They're not satisfied with a few $100 million. But a soulless development cannot suffice for human beings. If you don't have your soul being nourished, the inner person being satisfied and nourished, how can you really be an authentic human being? You have to have the inner development as well. And an excess of affluence is as harmful as excessive poverty. Being destitute is harmful, but so is too much wealth. This is a development model which the Northern Hemisphere has constructed and is now spreading to the South, where a sense of religion as well as human values is in danger of being overwhelmed by a wave of consumerism. That the idea that you can just buy more stuff and keep buying the newest things. You know, I love watching, it's an item on the news when a new telephone, one of these handheld telephones comes out and it has all these gadgets. There are hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people lined up to be the first ones to get them. And that this is a big deal. When the older one still works. Why are they doing that? Why do people do this? This is consumerism, and that's a problem. Some people have a motto. The motto is fight hunger by changing your lifestyle. This has appeared in various church circles, and which shows the people of the rich nations how to become brothers and sisters of the poor. We need to turn to a more austere way of life, which will favor a new model of development that gives attention to ethical and religious values. Now, you have to be careful here, because it's not just that if I give up my wealth and give it to the poor, the poor will be happy. Or because this is some of the thinking, you know, if you just give up some of your stuff, you make other people happy. You won't make them happy by giving up stuff. But you yourself might become more happy. If you realize I can live a simpler life, I don't need to have as much stuff and the anxiety that goes with it. And I can be satisfied with what I've got. That's something that is more what he's talking about here. So, to the poor, missionary activity brings light and an impulse toward true development, while a new evangelization ought to create among the wealthy a realization that the time has arrived for them to become true brothers and sisters of the poor, to the conversion of all to an integral development open to the absolute. So the wealthy can become a greater, true brothers of the poor, brothers and sisters to the poor people. And I know a lot of people who do this already. There are doctors and nurses who are willing to go to third world countries and do medical service absolutely for free. They know they don't need any more money, and they're not looking for more money. They're looking to use a gift that God has given them in order to help those who don't have that gift. And that's the kind of thing that he's talking about. And all of us have those skills. It can be a carpenter's skill, a mechanic's skill. It can be all sorts of skills. Skills of healthy cooking, all sorts of things. And we can bring those to people who have nothing, instead of using those just to get more and more stuff that we can't spend. And when we die, the children are just going to fight over the money. That's why Mother Angelica always used to say, put me in your will, because the kids are just going to fight over it anyway. I'll use it for the gospel. The kids don't like to hear that. Now he cites here solicitude re socialis again, paragraph 30, where he says, it falls to us who receive the gifts of God in order to make them fruitful, to sow and to reap. If we do not, even what we have will be taken away from us. A deeper study of these harsh words of Jesus will make us commit ourselves more resolutely to the duty, which is urgent for everyone today, to work together for the full development of others, development of the whole human being and of all people, so that the Lord gives us much, and we need to share it. And it's one of the things I got to say. This network exists because so many of you share. People are generous. I am very, very impressed with that kind of generosity. And people do help the missions. And they do give of themselves. And they do live a simple lifestyle for the sake of helping the missions. And I'm very, very impressed with that. But the Pope wants us to spread this so that more people in our culture will have the same mentality of being willing to help those in need. Now, paragraph 60, charity, the source and criterion of mission. The Pope said in his visit to Brazil, and I quote, the church all over the world wishes to be the church of the poor. She wishes to draw out all the truth contained in the Beatitudes of Jesus Christ, especially in the first Beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit. The church wishes to teach this truth, and she wishes to put it into practice, just as Jesus came to do and to teach. So this is one of the things that the church seeks to do. And the young churches, these are the mission churches that are just getting started, tend to be found among people suffering from widespread poverty in Africa, Latin America, and some parts of Asia. And they often give voice to this concern as an integral part of their mission, so that the young churches really try to live out the mission to the poor. And the Latin American bishops at Puebla said at their third conference at Puebla in 1979, quote, the poor deserve preferential attention, whatever their moral or personal situation. The poor have been made in the image and likeness of God to be his children. But this image has been obscured and even violated. For this reason, God has become their defender and he loves them. It follows that the poor are those to whom the mission is first addressed, and their evangelization is par excellence the sign and proof of the mission of Jesus. So this is part of the task that we have, is to be on a mission to those people who are poor. Being faithful to the Beatitudes, the church is called to be on the side of those who are poor and oppressed in any way. I therefore exhort the disciples of Christ in all Christian communities, from families to dioceses, parishes to religious institutes, to carry out a sincere review of their lives regarding solidarity with the poor. At the same time, I express gratitude to the missionaries who, by their loving presence and service to others, are working for the integral development of individuals and society, by hospitals and schools, etc. And he wants to thank them. And we thank them. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.